The Indian GDP series has undergone a little bit of a revision. As a result of that, stuff that was earlier in services has now become part of manufacturing. So the manufacturing share in GDP is slightly higher than what we thought it was. But no matter, the fact remains that manufacturing share in GDP has been around 17% or so. It ought to be higher. It ought to be 24%, 25%, whichever yardstick you choose to use. And I'm using the word manufacturing. I think we're talking about manufacturing. We are not talking about industry. Industry also includes non-manufacturing components. And I entirely agree that one should not per se look at the share, because the share depends on what is happening to other sectoral elements, including services. And unless one assumes that services are just going to disappear, then the manufacturing share is not overnight going to become 25%. Essentially what's been happening in India down the years is whatever agriculture has been dropping in terms of its sectoral share in GDP, about half of that has been picked up by manufacturing, about half by services. Having said that, there are any number of studies which have been done on what constrains Indian manufacturing, and not necessarily in any order of priority. The most important ones would be: one, infrastructure, by which I mean physical infrastructure, and within that physical infrastructure, particularly roads, ports, transport in general, and most importantly, electricity. Number two would be some issues connected with the taxation regime, particularly on the indirect tax side. Item number three would be a broad issue of labor. When I say a broad issue of labor, I don't mean just labor laws, certainly not statutory laws, but also a skills issue which has already been flagged. I think item number four would be procedures. These, to my mind, are the most important ones. There are some others that are mentioned. The next bulleted point I want to make is that indeed the government, the new government, has begun processes for removing some of those historical hurdles. However, one needs to realize that this is a government in Delhi, and Make in India does not happen in Delhi. Make in India happens in the states. And many of these issues that we are talking about, particularly those pertaining to factor markets — by factor markets I mean also land issues, environmental issues, labor issues, forest clearances — they relate to the states. All I can therefore say in conclusion is we know what the constraints are, and attempts have started to ensure that manufacturing begins to do better than what it is, what it has in the past, but we should not look at it in terms of shares in GDP. I think that would be a wrong indicator, as opposed to saying that manufacturing should grow by, let's say, 10%.